Dr. Elena Rodriguez wiped the sweat from her forehead as she knelt beside the ancient stone tablet. The air on Kepler 442b was thick and humid, making every breath feel heavy in her lungs. She had been working on this dig site for 3 months now, and today felt different. The symbols carved into the stone seemed to shimmer in the alien sunlight, almost as if they were alive. Elena ran her scanner over the markings for the 100th time. The patterns were unlike anything she had seen before. They were not random scratches or simple pictures. These symbols had structure, purpose, meaning. She pulled up her tablet and began comparing the patterns to every known alien language in the database. Nothing matched. Then something strange happened. As she stared at the symbols, they began to look familiar. Not familiar like she had seen them before, but familiar like something deep inside her recognized them. She shook her head and blamed it on the long hours under the alien sun. Back on Earth, Dr. Marcus Webb was having his own strange day. He sat in his lab at the Genetic Research Institute, staring at DNA sequences that made no sense. For years, scientists had called these parts of human DNA junk code. They seemed to serve no purpose, just random genetic noise left over from evolution. But Marcus was beginning to think they were wrong. The sequences were too organized to be random. They had patterns like a language written in genetic code. Marcus had been studying these sequences for months, trying to understand what they meant. Today, he had made a breakthrough. When he exposed tissue samples to certain types of radiation, the junk DNA became active. It started producing proteins that had never been seen before. Marcus picked up his phone and called his assistant. "Amy, I need you to run another test. Use the same radiation frequency as yesterday, but this time monitor the cellular changes in real time." Amy Foster had been working with Marcus for 2 years. She was young but brilliant, with an intuitive understanding of genetics that impressed even veteran scientists. "Dr. Webb, the cellular changes are incredible. The DNA is not just activating, it is changing the cells themselves. They are becoming stronger, faster, more resistant to damage." Meanwhile, on the exploration vessel UES Horizon, Captain Lisa Morgan received an urgent message from Earth Command. She read the transmission twice before believing what it said. 3 more sites had been discovered across different star systems, all containing the same type of symbols that Dr. Rodriguez had found on Kepler 442b. Lisa called her science officer to the bridge. "Commander Blake, we are changing course. I am sending you the coordinates of a site in the Tau Ceti system. We need to investigate these ruins immediately." Ryan Blake looked at the data with growing excitement. He had been studying xenoarchaeology for 15 years, and nothing like this had ever been discovered before. "Captain, if these sites are connected, we might be looking at evidence of an ancient galactic civilization. This could change everything we know about the history of the galaxy." Back on Kepler 442b, Elena made another discovery that sent chills down her spine. While examining the walls of the underground chamber she had found beneath the main dig site, she noticed that the symbols were not just carved into the stone. They were somehow embedded in the molecular structure of the rock itself, as if they had been written with technology far beyond current human understanding. She transmitted her findings to Earth, including detailed scans of the symbols. Within hours, she received a response from Dr. Webb that made her hands shake as she read it. The patterns in the alien symbols matched perfectly with the junk DNA sequences he had been studying. Elena sat down hard on a nearby rock. The implications were staggering. If alien symbols matched human DNA, it meant that either humans had been in contact with this civilization before, or something even more incredible was true. She decided to go deeper into the underground chamber. The tunnel seemed to stretch for kilometers beneath the surface, all carved with the same mysterious symbols. As she walked deeper, her handheld scanner began picking up energy readings from ahead. The tunnel opened into a vast cavern filled with objects that defied explanation. They looked like weapons, but their design was elegant and organic, as if they had been grown rather than built. Some were small enough to hold in one hand, while others were the size of vehicles. All of them hummed with a faint energy that made Elena feel strange, as if something inside her was responding to their presence. She approached one of the smaller devices carefully. It was shaped like a staff, with intricate patterns running along its surface. The moment her fingers touched it, the patterns began to glow with a soft blue light. The device felt warm in her hands and somehow familiar, as if she had held it before in a dream. Elena activated her recorder and began documenting everything she saw. There were hundreds of these devices scattered throughout the cavern, all different but sharing the same organic design philosophy. Some looked like armor, others like tools or vehicles. All of them seemed to be waiting for something. As she worked, Elena began to feel a strange sensation in her mind. It was like hearing voices from far away, speaking in a language she did not understand but somehow knew. The voices seemed to be calling to her, urging her to touch more of the devices, to activate them. She resisted the urge and instead focused on her scientific training. She took measurements, recorded energy readings, and documented the layout of the chamber. But with each passing hour, the sensation grew stronger. It was as if the devices were awakening in response to her presence. Elena transmitted her findings to Captain Morgan aboard the UES Horizon. The response came back immediately. Similar chambers had been found at all 3 sites. Each one contained the same type of technology, and each one seemed to be responding to human presence in ways that alien technology had never done before. Dr. Webb received Elena's data and immediately began cross-referencing it with his genetic research. The energy frequencies emitted by the alien devices matched exactly with the radiation that activated the junk DNA sequences. It was as if the DNA and the technology were designed to work together. As night fell on Kepler 442b, Elena made one final discovery that would change everything. Hidden in the deepest part of the chamber, she found a wall covered with star maps. The map showed the locations of dozens of sites across the galaxy, connected by lines that looked like battle formations. At the center of each formation was a symbol that looked disturbingly familiar. Elena compared the symbol to human anatomical charts and felt her blood run cold. The symbol was an exact match for the structure of human DNA. Whatever civilization had built these chambers, they had known about humans long before humanity had ever left Earth. The question was, how was that possible? And what did it mean for the future of the human race? Dr. Marcus Webb stared at the genetic sequences on his computer screen with growing amazement. For 3 weeks now, he had been studying volunteers who carried the special DNA markers that matched the alien symbols. When exposed to the same energy frequencies that Elena had discovered in the ancient chambers, these people began to change in ways that science could not explain. Amy Foster brought him the latest test results. Dr. Webb, subject number 15, just experienced another episode. This time the memories were more detailed. She described flying through space in some kind of advanced ship, fighting against dark creatures that seemed to absorb light itself. Marcus rubbed his tired eyes. 15 volunteers had now reported the same type of visions. They all described memories that were not their own. Memories of fighting in massive space battles alongside alien allies against a terrible enemy. The volunteers insisted these were not dreams or hallucinations, but actual memories that felt completely real. On Kepler 442b, Elena had made contact with the UES Horizon. Captain Lisa Morgan and her team had arrived and were now exploring the underground chambers. Marine Sergeant Jake Sullivan, part of the ship's security detail, had volunteered to test one of the alien devices. Jake was a tough soldier who had served in 3 different conflicts. He did not believe in supernatural nonsense and approached the glowing staff with the same practical attitude he brought to everything else. When his fingers closed around the device, his world exploded into visions that felt more real than reality itself. He saw himself wearing advanced armor that moved like a second skin. He was fighting alongside humans and aliens in a war that spanned entire galaxies. The enemy was something that defied description, creatures of pure darkness that consumed everything they touched. Jake could feel the weight of the weapon in his hands, could smell the recycled air of his helmet, could hear the voices of his squad mates calling out targets and warnings. When the vision ended, Jake found himself lying on the chamber floor with Captain Morgan and Dr. Rodriguez kneeling beside him. "How long was I out?" he asked, his voice shaking. "About 10 minutes," Lisa replied. "You were talking the whole time, but not in English." "We recorded everything." Elena played back the recording. Jake's voice could be heard speaking in a language that sounded ancient and powerful. When they ran it through the translation software, using the alien symbols as a reference, the meaning became clear. Jake had been giving tactical reports and receiving orders in a military engagement that had taken place 50,000 years ago. Back on Earth, Dr. Webb was making his own discoveries. The genetic markers that allowed humans to access these ancient memories were not random. They appeared in roughly 15% of the human population, distributed across all ethnic groups and geographic regions. More importantly, people with these markers showed enhanced physical and mental abilities even when not exposed to the alien technology. Amy brought him another startling piece of information. Dr. Webb, I have been researching the genetic bottleneck that occurred in human evolution around 50,000 years ago. The timing matches perfectly with the age of the alien ruins. According to genetic analysis, the human population dropped to less than 10,000 individuals during that period. Scientists have never been able to explain what caused such a dramatic reduction. Marcus began to piece together a disturbing picture. 50,000 years ago, something had happened that nearly wiped out the human race. At the same time, humans had somehow acquired genetic modifications that lay dormant for millennia. The modifications were now activating in response to alien technology that appeared to be designed specifically for human use. Elena and her team had discovered more star maps in the chambers. The maps showed the locations of ancient battlefields across the galaxy, each one marked with the same symbols found in human DNA. The pattern was becoming clear. Humans had been part of a galactic war that had raged across the stars 50,000 years ago. Captain Morgan received new orders from Earth Command. More exploration ships were being dispatched to investigate the battlefield sites marked on the alien star maps. Each site needed to be examined, and any technology found needed to be secured. The implications were too important to ignore. Jake Sullivan had become the test subject for more of the alien devices. Each time he made contact with the technology, he experienced more detailed memories of the ancient war. He learned that humans had not been native to Earth originally, but had been brought there by an alliance of alien races as part of a desperate plan to preserve civilization. The memories revealed that the enemy in the ancient war was something called the Void Spawn, creatures that existed to consume consciousness itself. They had been systematically destroying every intelligent species in the galaxy, absorbing their thoughts and memories to feed their endless hunger. The alien alliance had been losing the war until they discovered that humans possessed a unique genetic trait that made them immune to the Void Spawn's mental attacks. Dr. Webb's research confirmed what Jake's memories had revealed. The junk DNA in humans was not junk at all, but a sophisticated defense system designed to protect human consciousness from external manipulation. The genetic modifications had been installed by the alien alliance to create a race of warriors who could fight the Void Spawn effectively. Elena discovered something else in the deepest chambers of the ruins. Hidden behind walls that could only be opened by human genetic codes, she found records of the final battle of the ancient war. The records were stored in crystalline matrices that projected holographic images when activated by human touch. The holograms showed the last desperate battle above a blue planet that looked remarkably like Earth. Human and alien fleets fought together against a darkness that seemed to swallow stars themselves. The battle ended not in victory, but in a strategic retreat that saved the survivors but left the galaxy in ruins. Amy made another connection while studying the genetic data. Dr. Webb, the humans with the strongest genetic markers are also the most naturally aggressive and competitive. They show higher levels of physical fitness, faster reflexes, and stronger survival instincts. It is as if they were bred for war. Marcus realized the terrible truth. Humanity's aggressive nature, their tendency toward conflict, their rapid technological advancement compared to other species they had encountered, all of it was the result of genetic modifications designed to create the perfect warriors for an interstellar war. Jake's latest memory session revealed the most disturbing information yet. The Void Spawn had not been destroyed in the ancient war, only forced into hibernation. The alien alliance had used a massive energy pulse to put the creatures to sleep, but the effect was only temporary. According to the memories, the Void Spawn would eventually awaken and resume their campaign to consume all consciousness in the galaxy. Elena found the final piece of the puzzle in a sealed chamber that required genetic codes from multiple humans to open. Inside was a massive device that looked like a combination of computer and organic brain. When activated, it projected a message from the leader of the ancient alien alliance. The holographic figure looked remarkably human, but with subtle differences that marked it as alien. Its voice spoke in perfect English, though the language had not existed 50,000 years ago. If you are receiving this message, then the modifications we made to your species have awakened. This means the Void Spawn are returning. You are the children of warriors, bred from the strongest and most resilient humans we could find. Your DNA contains not just the memories of the ancient war, but also the blueprints for the weapons and technology you will need to fight it again. Captain Morgan transmitted all findings back to Earth immediately. Within hours, every government on the planet had declared a state of emergency. The evidence was undeniable. Humanity was about to face an enemy that had nearly destroyed the galaxy 50,000 years ago. The only hope was that the genetic modifications left by the ancient alliance would be enough to turn ordinary humans into the warriors they needed to be. Dr. Webb began working with military leaders to identify and train individuals with the strongest genetic markers. Time was running out, and humanity needed to prepare for a war they had been bred to fight but had forgotten how to win. The first warning came from the Deep Space Monitoring Station at the edge of the solar system. Technician Carol Davis was reviewing routine sensor data when she noticed energy signatures that did not match anything in the database. The readings were massive, indicating objects the size of small moons moving at impossible speeds toward inhabited star systems. Admiral Patricia Collins received the alert at Earth Defense Command headquarters. She had been briefed on the discoveries made by Dr. Rodriguez and her team, and the implications sent a chill down her spine. The energy signatures matched descriptions from Jake Sullivan's recovered memories of void spawn vessels. Dr. Elena Rodriguez was working frantically in the underground chambers on Kepler 442b, trying to activate the ancient defense system she had discovered. The technology responded to human touch, but operating it required knowledge that existed only in the genetic memories of specially modified humans. She had called for more volunteers with the right genetic markers to be sent from Earth. Jake Sullivan had become Elena's primary assistant in understanding the alien technology. His experiences with the memory visions had given him an intuitive understanding of how the ancient weapons worked. When he touched the control panels, the devices activated automatically, as if recognizing him as their rightful operator. "Dr. Rodriguez," Jake called out from across the chamber, "I think I found something important. This panel is showing the locations of other defense networks across the galaxy. They are all offline, but the readout suggests they can be reactivated remotely from this central command station." Elena hurried over to examine the panel. The display showed dozens of star systems, each marked with symbols that indicated dormant weapon platforms and shield generators. According to the readings, these systems had been built to protect inhabited worlds from void spawn attacks, but they had been shut down for 50,000 years. On Earth, Dr. Marcus Webb was working with military scientists to accelerate the awakening process for humans with the genetic markers. They had discovered that exposure to specific energy frequencies could trigger the dormant memories more quickly, but the process was dangerous. Several volunteers had suffered severe psychological trauma when their minds were flooded with memories of ancient battles. Amy Foster had been monitoring the volunteers carefully. "Dr. Webb, we are seeing consistent patterns in the awakened memories. All subjects report the same basic tactical information about fighting the void spawn. The creatures cannot be killed by conventional weapons because they exist partially outside normal space. The only effective weapons are those that disrupt their connection to our reality." Lieutenant Commander Ryan Blake had been selected to lead the first squadron of pilots trained to use the ancient fighter craft discovered in the ruins. The ships were unlike anything human engineers had ever seen, with organic curves and technology that seemed to grow rather than be manufactured. When pilots with the right genetic markers touched the controls, the ships came alive and responded to thought as much as physical input. Ryan's first flight in one of the ancient fighters was an experience that defied description. The ship felt like an extension of his own body, responding to his intentions before he was fully aware of them himself. The genetic memories provided him with decades of piloting experience that he had never actually lived through. "Control, this is Blake. The ship is responding perfectly. I can feel every system as if it were part of my nervous system. The weapons are targeting systems that I can sense but cannot see with normal vision. I think these ships were designed to fight enemies that exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously." Back in the underground chambers, Elena made a terrifying discovery. The central command system was showing incoming energy signatures that matched the reports from Earth's deep space monitors. The void spawn were not just returning, they were already here, approaching the outer systems of human space. Jake worked alongside Elena to bring the galaxy's ancient defense network online. Each system required a human genetic code to activate, and they had to work quickly. The readings showed that the approaching void spawn fleet was massive, larger than anything described in the recovered memories. Dr. Rodriguez, I am getting tactical data from the command system. The void spawn have evolved since the last war. They have learned to counter some of the weapons that were effective 50,000 years ago. We need to modify our approach. Dr. Webb received priority communications from defense installations across Earth. Volunteers with awakened genetic memories were reporting shared visions of the approaching enemy. The visions were not from the ancient past, but from the present moment, as if the modified humans could somehow sense the void spawn across interstellar distances. Amy analyzed the reports from the volunteers. Dr. Webb, the subjects are describing the enemy fleet in perfect detail. Even though they are light years away from Earth, I think the genetic modifications include some form of quantum consciousness link that allows humans to share tactical information instantaneously across any distance. Admiral Collins was coordinating the defense of Earth when she received an urgent message from Captain Lisa Morgan aboard the UES Horizon. The exploration vessel had encountered the first void spawn scout ships near the ruins on Kepler 442b. The battle had revealed both the terrifying power of the ancient enemy and the incredible effectiveness of human-operated alien technology. Admiral, we engaged 3 enemy scouts with our modified fighters. The void spawn ships were completely invisible to our normal sensors, but pilots with awakened genetic memories could track them perfectly. When the enemy tried to use their consciousness-draining attacks on our crews, the attacks had no effect. Our genetic modifications provide complete immunity to their primary weapon. The news was both encouraging and terrifying. Humans could fight the void spawn effectively, but only those with the right genetic markers and access to ancient technology. The problem was that the enemy fleet approaching Earth was enormous, and humanity had only a handful of awakened warriors and a few dozen ancient ships. Elena and Jake managed to activate defense networks in 12 star systems before the first major void spawn attack began. The ancient weapons came online just as enemy ships entered the outer systems, their dark hulls seeming to absorb light itself as they moved through space like living shadows. The battle for the Centauri system was the first real test of human abilities against the returning enemy. Commander Blake led a squadron of ancient fighters against void spawn vessels that dwarfed their small craft. The enemy ships were massive, organic-looking things that seemed to bend space around themselves as they moved. All pilots, remember your training. Do not rely on instruments, trust the genetic memories. The enemy exists in multiple dimensions, so target their reality anchors, not their physical hulls. The human pilots found that fighting the void spawn was unlike any other form of combat. The enemy ships could phase in and out of normal space, making conventional targeting impossible. Only pilots with awakened memories could track the enemy vessels through their dimensional shifts and target the specific points that kept them anchored in reality. Dr. Webb was analyzing real-time data from the battle when he made a startling discovery. Amy, look at these readings from the fighter pilots. When they engage the enemy, their genetic modifications become more active. It is as if combat with the void spawn triggers further awakening of their dormant abilities. The battle for Centauri lasted 18 hours and ended with the destruction of the entire void spawn attack force. Human losses were minimal, but the victory came at a cost. Every pilot who had fought in the battle reported permanent changes to their mental state. They could now sense void spawn presence across vast distances and found themselves thinking in tactical patterns that felt foreign, yet natural. Elena and Jake succeeded in activating defense networks across 47 star systems, creating a network of ancient weapons that could protect inhabited worlds from void spawn attacks. But the central command system was showing disturbing information about the true size of the enemy force. Dr. Rodriguez, according to these readings, what we have faced so far are just scout forces. The main void spawn fleet is still approaching from the edge of the galaxy. The numbers are staggering. There are thousands of their ships, each one capable of consuming the consciousness of an entire planet. Jake studied the tactical displays with growing understanding. His awakened memories provided him with knowledge of void spawn capabilities that filled him with dread. Elena, the main fleet includes harvester ships, These are not just weapons, they are mobile consciousness processing facilities. If they reach inhabited worlds, they will not just kill the populations. They will absorb every thought and memory of every person on the planet. Admiral Collins coordinated the evacuation of outer colonies as the main void spawn fleet approached. Humanity had won the first battles, but the war was just beginning. The ancient genetic modifications had awakened humanity's warrior heritage. But would it be enough to face an enemy that had nearly destroyed the galaxy 50,000 years ago? Elena made one final discovery in the deepest chambers of the ruins. Hidden behind barriers that required genetic codes from a dozen different humans, she found records of the original human homeworld. The Void Spawnman fleet arrived at the edge of human space like a wave of living darkness. Admiral Patricia Collins watched the sensor displays from the bridge of the newly commissioned battleship UES Defiance, humanity's first vessel built using recovered ancient technology. The enemy fleet stretched across light years of space, thousands of ships that seemed to absorb the light of distant stars. Admiral, we are receiving distress calls from 17 different star systems. The Kepler colonies, New Geneva, Port Darwin, all report void spawn attacks in progress. The enemy is not concentrating their forces. They are spreading out to consume as many worlds as possible simultaneously. Patricia studied the tactical display with growing concern. The human defense fleet was powerful but small, consisting of only 43 ships equipped with ancient technology and crews with awakened genetic memories. The enemy outnumbered them by more than 100 to 1. Dr. Elena Rodriguez had established her command center in the ancient ruins on Kepler 442b, now the coordination point for the galaxy-wide defense network. She worked alongside Jake Sullivan and a team of awakened humans to manage the automated defense systems scattered across dozens of star systems. The ancient weapons were incredibly powerful, but they required constant human oversight to operate effectively. Jake, the defense grid in the Vega system is reporting massive energy signatures. The Void Spawn are bringing in their harvester ships. Those are the vessels that can drain the consciousness from entire planets. Jake's awakened memories provided him with tactical knowledge that felt both foreign and natural. Elena, we need to evacuate Vega immediately. The harvester ships do not just kill people. They absorb their minds and add them to a collective consciousness that makes the Void Spawn stronger. Every person they consume makes them more intelligent and more dangerous. On Earth, Dr. Marcus Webb was working frantically to awaken more humans with the genetic markers. The process had been refined, but it still took weeks to safely unlock the dormant memories without causing psychological damage. Time was a luxury they no longer had. Amy Foster brought him disturbing news from the volunteer screening programs. Dr. Webb, we have identified over 2 million people worldwide with the genetic markers, but less than 10% of them can be safely awakened with our current methods. The others either resist the process or suffer complete mental breakdown when exposed to the ancient memories. Meanwhile, Lieutenant Commander Ryan Blake was leading the evacuation of the Tau Ceti colonies when his fighter squadron encountered their first harvester ship. The vessel was enormous, easily 10 kilometers long, with a hull that seemed to be made of crystallized darkness. As they approached, Ryan could feel the ship trying to invade his mind, probing for weaknesses in his consciousness. All pilots, maintain mental discipline. Do not let the harvester establish a connection with your thoughts. Target the consciousness collection arrays on the ventral surface. The battle against the harvester was unlike anything the human pilots had experienced. The ship did not just fight with weapons, but with direct mental attacks that tried to overwhelm their minds with alien thoughts and emotions. Only the genetic modifications protected them from being absorbed into the Void Spawn collective consciousness. Dr. Webb made a breakthrough when he discovered that humans who had been in direct combat with the Void Spawn could awaken other humans much more safely than technological methods. Jake Sullivan was brought back to Earth to help with the awakening process, his combat experience somehow making him capable of guiding others through the dangerous transformation. The key is not to force the memories to surface, Jake explained to the new volunteers. You have to accept them as part of yourself. These are not foreign memories, they are your heritage, your birthright as a warrior species. Elena coordinated the defense of the inner systems from her command center, but the situation was becoming desperate. Every day brought news of more worlds falling to the Void Spawn. The enemy seemed to learn from each battle, adapting their tactics to counter human strategies. Worse, the harvester ships were beginning to coordinate their attacks, suggesting that the absorbed consciousness from consumed worlds was making the Void Spawn Collective more intelligent. Admiral Collins received a priority message from the exploration vessel UES Discovery, which had been investigating ancient ruins in the Andromeda contact zone. Captain Sam Torres reported the discovery of a massive ancient shipyard containing hundreds of partially constructed vessels designed for human operation. Admiral, these ships are far more advanced than anything we have recovered so far. They appear to be designed specifically for fighting harvester ships. The construction bays are automated, but they require genetic authorization from awakened humans to complete the building process. The discovery offered hope, but also revealed the terrifying scope of the ancient war. The Alien Alliance had been preparing for the return of the Void Spawn for 50,000 years, building weapons and defenses across the galaxy. The fact that they had felt the need to construct so many warships suggested they had known the enemy would return stronger than before. Elena made her own disturbing discovery when she accessed deeper levels of the command system. The ancient records revealed that the Void Spawn were not originally from this galaxy. They were refugees from a neighboring galaxy that they had completely consumed, absorbing every conscious being in billions of star systems. Their arrival in this galaxy 50,000 years ago had been the beginning of a feeding frenzy that would continue until every thinking being was dead. Jake worked with a team of engineers to understand the advanced weapon systems found in the ancient shipyard. The technology was incredibly sophisticated, using principles that human science was only beginning to understand. The weapons could target Void Spawn ships across multiple dimensions simultaneously, preventing them from escaping into alternate realities. These systems are not just weapons, Jake explained to Admiral Collins. They are consciousness disruptors that can sever the connection between a Void Spawn ship and the collective mind that controls it. Without that connection, the ships become vulnerable to conventional attack. Dr. Webb's awakening program was finally showing results. Thousands of humans with activated genetic memories were being integrated into military units across the fleet. Each awakened human could operate ancient technology instinctively and shared a quantum consciousness link that allowed for perfect coordination across any distance. Amy made another discovery that changed their understanding of the war. Dr. Webb, the genetic modifications in humans are not just for fighting the Void Spawn. They include defensive protocols that prevent the consciousness absorption process from working. When a harvester ship tries to drain a human mind, the genetic modifications create a feedback loop that damages the ship instead. The tide of the war began to turn when Admiral Collins led the first major offensive using ships from the ancient shipyard. The human fleet struck at a concentration of harvester ships in the Sirius system, using new weapons that could target the enemy across multiple dimensions. The battle was fierce, but for the first time, humans were able to destroy harvester ships without significant losses. Elena coordinated the activation of ancient superweapons hidden throughout the galaxy. These devices had been built into the cores of dead planets and asteroid fields, waiting for human genetic authorization to activate. When triggered, they created massive energy fields that disrupted Void Spawn ships across entire star systems. The enemy responded by changing tactics. Instead of spreading their forces thin, they began concentrating their fleets for massive assaults on key human strongholds. The battle for Earth became inevitable when long-range sensors detected the largest Void Spawn fleet ever assembled moving toward the solar system. Jake received visions through his genetic link with other awakened humans fighting across the galaxy. The memories were not from the ancient past, but from the present moment, showing him battles taking place light years away. Through this quantum consciousness network, he could coordinate defensive strategies across dozens of star systems simultaneously. Elena, the Void Spawn are learning faster than we anticipated. They are beginning to adapt to our consciousness disruption weapons. Each battle teaches them more about how to counter our advantages. Dr. Webb analyzed combat data from across the galaxy and made a horrifying discovery. The Void Spawn were not just adapting to human tactics, they were evolving. Each absorbed consciousness made them more intelligent and more capable. If the war continued much longer, they would eventually overcome all human advantages through sheer adaptive intelligence. Admiral Collins realized that humanity could not win a war of attrition. against an enemy that became stronger with every victory. The only hope was to find a way to end the conflict quickly, before the Void Spawn collective intelligence became too powerful to defeat. Elena accessed the deepest levels of the ancient command system and found references to a final weapon, something called the Consciousness Anchor. The records were fragmentary, but they suggested it was a device that could end the Void Spawn threat permanently. The problem was that using it would require a sacrifice that might fundamentally change what it meant to be human. The Void Spawn armada that approached Earth was unlike anything seen in the ancient records. Dr. Elena Rodriguez watched from her command center as sensors registered over 10,000 enemy vessels, including dozens of the massive harvester ships that could drain entire worlds of consciousness. The dark fleet stretched across the outer solar system like a living shadow, moving with purpose toward humanity's home. Jake, the quantum consciousness network is detecting something else. The enemy fleet includes a new type of vessel, something that does not appear in any of the ancient memories. The awakened humans across the galaxy are all receiving the same warning signals through their genetic link. Jake Sullivan studied the tactical displays with growing unease. His awakened memories provided knowledge of Void Spawn capabilities, but these new ships were completely unknown. Elena, I am getting impressions from the other awakened humans. They are calling it a mind forge. It is not just a weapon, it is a factory that can convert absorbed consciousness into new Void Spawn entities. Admiral Patricia Collins coordinated the defense of Earth from the bridge of the UES Defiance. The human fleet had grown to over 300 vessels equipped with ancient technology, but they were still vastly outnumbered. More importantly, each battle had shown that the Void Spawn were adapting faster than human tactical evolution could keep pace. Admiral, we are receiving priority communications from the research team on Kepler 442b. Dr. Rodriguez has located the consciousness anchor device mentioned in the ancient records. According to her analysis, it may be our only chance to end this war. Patricia reviewed Elena's findings with a mixture of hope and dread. The consciousness anchor was indeed powerful enough to destroy the Void Spawn permanently, but activating it would require every awakened human to link their consciousness through the ancient quantum network simultaneously. The process would fundamentally alter human evolution, creating a collective consciousness that might lose individual identity forever. Dr. Marcus Webb had arrived at the command center on Kepler 442b to help evaluate the consciousness anchor. His analysis of the genetic modifications revealed the true scope of what the ancient alliance had planned. Elena, the genetic markers in humans were not just for fighting the Void Spawn. They were designed to eventually merge all human consciousness into a single entity capable of existing across multiple dimensions. The alien alliance intended for humans to become something beyond individual biological life. Amy Foster worked alongside Dr. Webb to understand the implications. The process is irreversible. Once the consciousness link is fully activated, awakened humans will share all thoughts and memories permanently. Individual identity would be preserved, but it would exist as part of a greater collective mind. Lieutenant Commander Ryan Blake led the advanced fighter squadrons in delaying actions against the approaching Void Spawn fleet. The battles were fierce, with human pilots using their genetic memories to anticipate enemy movements, while the Void Spawn adapted their tactics in real time. Each engagement revealed new enemy capabilities that made victory seem increasingly impossible. Control, this is Blake. The new Mindforge ship is doing something unprecedented. It is not just absorbing consciousness from our captured pilots. It is creating new Void Spawn entities that have human tactical knowledge. The enemy is learning our strategies by converting our own people into versions of themselves. Elena made the most difficult decision of her life when she realized that conventional warfare could not defeat an enemy that grew stronger with every victory. She activated the deepest protocols in the ancient command system and sent a quantum consciousness signal to every awakened human across the galaxy. The message was simple. Humanity had to choose between individual existence and collective survival. Jake was the first to respond to the consciousness link activation. He felt his individual thoughts beginning to merge with the minds of awakened humans across dozens of star systems. The experience was overwhelming but also strangely natural, as if his genetic modifications had been preparing him for this moment his entire life. Elena, I can feel them all. Every awakened human in the galaxy is connected now. We are still ourselves, but we are also something more. I can access tactical knowledge from pilots fighting near Andromeda, strategic insights from commanders defending the core worlds, even engineering solutions from technicians working on ancient weapon systems. Dr. Webb monitored the consciousness merging process with fascination and concern. The genetic modifications were working exactly as designed, creating a collective human mind that retained individual personalities while sharing all knowledge and experience. But the process was permanent and irreversible. Humanity was evolving into something unprecedented. The collective human consciousness that emerged from the linking process was far more powerful than the sum of its individual parts. Elena found that she could perceive the entire galactic battlefield simultaneously, understanding void spawn movements and intentions with perfect clarity. The enemy's adaptive intelligence was impressive, but it was still limited by their individual consciousness structure. Admiral Collins felt the change as her own mind linked with the growing collective. Instead of losing her identity, she found it enhanced by connection with thousands of other military minds. Strategic possibilities that would have taken hours to calculate became instantly apparent through shared consciousness processing power. All fleet commanders, this is Collins. We now have perfect tactical coordination across all human forces. The consciousness link allows us to operate as a single organism, while maintaining individual initiative. Initiate final battle protocols. The battle for Earth began when the Void Spawn fleet entered the inner solar system. Human forces met them at the asteroid belt, using ancient weapons that could target enemy ships across multiple dimensions. But the real power came from the collective consciousness, coordination that allowed perfect tactical synchronization. Across the entire fleet, Ryan Blake led the fighter squadrons, in attacks that seemed almost choreographed. Every pilot knew exactly where every other pilot would be at any given moment, allowing for tactical maneuvers that would have been impossible for individual minds to coordinate. The human fighters moved like a single organism, striking at void spawn weaknesses with surgical precision. Elena accessed the full power of the consciousness anchor from her command center. The device was not just a weapon, but a tool for expanding consciousness beyond the limitations of individual biological minds. When activated, it would create a permanent quantum consciousness field that could exist independently of physical bodies. Jake, the anchor is ready for activation, but using it will change us forever. We will become a collective consciousness capable of existing across multiple realities simultaneously. We will be able to fight the void spawn on their own dimensional level, but we will no longer be human in the traditional sense. The turning point came when the collective human consciousness made a discovery that changed everything. The void spawn were not evil entities seeking to destroy consciousness, but rather the immune system of a universe-scale organism that viewed individual consciousness as an infection to be eliminated. The ancient war had not been between good and evil, but between different concepts of what consciousness should be. Jake experienced a revelation through the collective link. Elena, the void spawn are not trying to destroy us out of malice. They are trying to restore what they see as the natural order of the universe. They believe that individual consciousness creates chaos and suffering, and that all minds should be absorbed into a peaceful collective state. Dr. Webb analyzed the philosophical implications through the shared consciousness network. The ancient alien alliance had faced the same choice that humanity now confronted: remain as individual consciousness and fight eternally against the universal immune system, or evolve into a collective consciousness that could coexist with the cosmic order. Elena made the final decision to activate the consciousness anchor fully. The device reached out across the galaxy, connecting not just awakened humans but touching the collective consciousness of the void spawn themselves. For the first time in cosmic history, two different forms of collective consciousness made direct contact. The communication that followed was not through words or images, but through direct sharing of fundamental concepts and experiences. The human collective consciousness shared the value of individual identity, creativity, and the beauty that came from diverse perspectives working together. The Void Spawn Collective shared their vision of universal peace through unity and the end of the suffering caused by individual consciousness. Ryan Blake experienced the moment of contact through the fighter he was piloting. The Void Spawn ship he was engaging suddenly stopped attacking and began transmitting complex mathematical patterns that felt like attempts at communication rather than weapons fire. Across the battlefield, similar events were occurring as both sides tried to understand each other. The resolution came not through victory or defeat, but through negotiation between cosmic-scale intelligences. The human collective consciousness and the Void Spawn collective reached an agreement that preserved both forms of consciousness while establishing boundaries that each would respect.